Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Julibeth May Opema. Our topic is all about EPRA law. EPRA law is an Indigenous People Rights Act of 1997. It is an act that recognizes, promotes, and protects indigenous people or indigenous community. Citation, Republic Act Number 8371, enacted by House of the Representatives of the Philippines, enacted by Senate of the Philippines, signed by Fidel V. Ramos, and signed on October 29, 1997. The early beginnings in 1909 in the case of Carino and versus insular government, the court has recognized long occupancy of the land by indigenous member of the cultural communities as one of the private ownership, which in legal concept is termed native title. This case paved the way for the government to review the so-called native title or private right. In the year 1919, the second public land was enacted by recognizing the right of ownership of the native of the country who, since July 4, 1907, they shall be conclusively presumed to have performed all conditions essential to a government grant and shall be entitled to a certificate of title. In 1936, Commonwealth Act Number 141, amended by our Republic Act 3872 of 1964, was passed which provide that members of the national cultural minorities who have resided on agricultural public land since July 4, 1955 are entitled to recognition of ownership whether or not the land has been certified as disposable. So, prior to this, a presidential decree was issued in 1974 declaring all agricultural lands occupied and cultivated by members of the national cultural communities. Since 1964, as alienable and disposable, except the island of Panay, Negros, and provinces of Abra, Quezon, Benguet, and Camarines Sur, which became effective on March 11, 1984. So, the historical evolution of RA 8371, the decrees that have been passed fail to encompass all the needs of the indigenous people primarily because of failure in implementation and sole focus on the land and domains only. So, the most recent laws before the Indigenous Peoples' Right Act of 1997 was passed which recognized the existence of ancestral land are the right are ancestral land right are the Organic Act of Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, Republic Act 64, I mean 6734 to 1989, and the Organic Act of the for the Cordillera Autonomous Region, Republic Act 6766 to 1989. Under the Constitution of the Philippines, the 1987 Philippine Constitution mandates Senate recognition, protection, promotion, and fulfillment of the rights of the indigenous people in the Philippines. So, sa wala pa na nahimong kanang EPRA law, wala pa nahimo ang EPRA law, wala pa siya. Dili pa EPRA law ang iyang pangalan. Ang iyang pangalan is naka-private pa siya, naa siya sa kuan pa siya kanang wala pa siya nahimuan og kanang Republic Act. So EPRA, formerly known as Ancestral Domain Bill. Ang EPRA daw kuno dili pa siya law, wala pa siya nahimuan og law, bill pa siya. So ang iyang pangalan is Ancestral Domain Bill. Ancestral Domain Bill was first filed in the Congress sometime in 1987 under the Senate Bill number 909, authored by Senator Santanina Rasul, Senator Joseph Estrada, and Senator Alberto Romulo during the 8th Congress, but was never enacted into law. Wala siya na himuan og balaod. Wala pa siya na himuan og balaod. Bill pa siya. So, in the 19th Congress, Senator Rasul introduced Senate Bill number 1029. And Senator Gloria Macapagal Arroyo introduced Senate Bill number 1849. However, the bill was never sponsored and deliberated upon on the floor. So wala pa gid siya na nakuanan og bill sa kato nga mga wala pa siya nahimuan og balaod gyud, bill pa gid siya. So because of this, a more comprehensive law is needed that seeks to stop prejudice against indigenous people through recognition of certain rights over their ancestral lands and to live in accordance recognize and protect the rights of the indigenous people, not only to their ancestral domain, but to social justice and human rights, self-determination, and empowerment, and their cultural integrity. So, a consensus was made in December 1995 between IP representatives and NGO representatives. 7 non-negotiable points of the bill that were promoted are the following. 7 ka-negotiable points sa bill ang nahimo nila. Recognition of native title and rights of indigenous people or IPs to ancestral domains. Number 2, respect for the right to cultural integrity. Number 3, recognition of indigenous people's political structures and governance. And number 4, delivery of basic services to the indigenous peoples. Number 5, respect for the human rights. Number 6, elimination or of discrimination. And number 7, lastly, is the creation of an office that would cater to IP's needs. Nagbuhat gyud sila og kanang 7 ka kuan na dapat, pero wala pa siya, non-negotiable pa siya. In 1996, during the 10th Congress, Senator Juan Flavier sponsored Senate Bill number 1728. Nagpasa na pod si Juan Flavier. Nagkuan na pod siya sa Senate Bill. In his sponsorship speech, he discussed the legal basis for the bill found in 1987 Constitution. So, despite of difficult hurdles and amendments enacted in the Congress that nearly brought the movement to its death, the House of Representatives finally approved the bill late in September 1997. President Fidel V. Ramos signed it on October 29, 1997. Officially, ang atong gitawag nga katong Ancestral Domain Bill nahimo na pirmahan na gyud siya sa presidente, nahimo na gyud siya nga Republic Act, na gyud siya balaod. officially making it Republic Act number 8371. Protect, Indigenous Peoples' Right Act of 1997, which aims to recognize, protect, and promote the rights of indigenous cultural communities and indigenous people. Indigenous cultural communities, it is an ICC, and indigenous peoples, it is an IPs, and for the other purpose. And definition of terms: indigenous people of the Philippines. The Philippines is culturally diverse country with an estimated 14 to 17 million indigenous peoples belonging to 110 ethno-linguistic groups. The term indigenous people is used to reflect the contemporary international language, which was formally adopted in 1993. So, as of 1998, these these are the list of the identified indigenous people in the Philippines and their location. So makita nato diha ang mga ang mga kanang mga lugar sa mga members sa IPs. So the coalition is participated by IPOs in the Cordillera, Region 1, Nueva Vizcaya, Cagayan, Cotabato, Sierra Madre, Quezon, Aurora, Quirino, Nueva Ecija, Zambales, Pampanga, Bulacan, Mindoro Occidental, Palawan, Panay, Davao, Cagayan, Cotabato, and Zamboanga. The ancestral domains. The 1997 EPRA law defines ancestral domains, areas generally to ICCs and IPs compromising lands, inland waters, coastal areas, and natural resources held under a claim of ownership occupied or possesses by ICCs and IPs by themselves or through their ancestors, communally or individually since time immemorial. Mao na siya ang nakakuan sa ancestral domains. Ancestral lands, lahi ang ancestral lands sa ancestral domains. Ang ancestral lands is stated in the law refer to lands occupied, possessed, and utilized by individuals, families, and clans who are members of the IPs, ICCs, since time immemorial. Naa sila'y similarity sa kanang ancestral domains, pero ang ancestral domains wala ang iyaha nakakuan sa iyaha ang inland waters, coastal areas, and natural resources. But ang ancestral lands is nakakuan lang sa iyaha ang katong member sa family, sa clan, o sa member ang individual nga member sa ICC. Maoy ray maka-claim. So ICCs and IPs are pursuant to RA 8371, Chapter 2, Section 3. Indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples refer to a group of people or homogeneous societies identified by self-ascription. Naapod tay independent ICCs or IPs, mao ni sila ang grupo sa mga indigenous people nga wala nag-depend sa naglahi sila ba, wala sila nag-appeal sa naamantay National Commission on Indigenous People, kanang ang nagdala gyud ang government. Naapod sa ilaha, lahi sila nga IPs gyapon sila, pero kanang naa sila kaugalingon kuan pero gi kuanan gyapon sila naa gyapon sila ilo. Mao ni ang kani sila nga kuan manggod wala sila naka-register sa NCIP. So mao ni sila ang KKA. Kinatas ang kahugpungan sa kadatuan alimaong. Higaonon sugbuanon, they continue the legacy with spirit of Lapu-Lapu and Leon Kilat. So sa Visayas man siguro nato ni makita no si KKA, kinatas ang kahugpungan sa kadatuan alimaong. Kay di ba si Lapu-Lapu sa kuan man ni siya? Then the challenges faced by indigenous people in the Philippines are land rights and resource access, poverty and marginalization, cultural preservation and identity, human rights violation and discrimination. Daghan man gyud kaayo sa tanan no. Diri sa Philippines man gyud kay daghan man gyud kaayo kanang mga gapang discriminate pag makita nila nga ay taga-bukid og porma, i-discriminate na dayon daghan kay kuan diri kana dayon climate change impacts. Organizations related to EPRA are Asian Development Bank or ADB, International Labor Organization, Philippine Action for Intercultural Development, National Confederation of Indigenous Peoples, Tribal Communities Association of the Philippines, provides legal assistance to IPs. Related international legislation on IP rights, the United Nations acknowledges worldwide the rights of the indigenous people. The article on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People is recognized in the international sphere and was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly during its 61st session at UN headquarters in New York City on September 13, 2007. So, ang IPDI dili lang sa Philippines. Kuan gyapon siya nakarelate siya sa United Nation. Dito sila nag 61st session sa New York City. So,
good day everyone. Again, I'm Ryan Perikiti. My topic is about enforcement of EPRA. During the summit held on October 2008, indigenous people or indigenous people were gathered in the conference in Naga, Zamboanga, Sibugay. The said summit was a way for IPs to reclaim the rights that has been created by higher officials. The specific faults were known to be Philippine law, kaya mas maraming indigenous people ang nagbabasakali na mahiad ang kilusang batas na nagproprotekta sa kanila. Then, the certain issue the whole was the higher people deprived them to follow their own custom and traditional. Kagaya lamang ng kung paano sila malayong ilahan ang kanilang pagkakakilanlan at ang kaibahan nila sa lahat. And then, for many rights reason, they were also hindered to hunt animals and cultivated lands, which have become their source of food, daily needs. So, kaya mas lalong naghihirap ang taong dahil sa paano tratuhin ng mga nasa itaas ang mga mahirap lamang. So, mas kawawa ang mga indigenous people kasi paano sila makagawa sa ilang sarili nila para makamit nila ang mga kailangan sa ilang pamilya, no? And then organization related to EPRA. First, Asian Development Asian Development Bank, ADB, has contributed a big help to IP's people, especially for planning crops and continuing agriculture. The Charm project is the one way for them sustainable their living and life. So, ito rin ay namabisang paraan para maaganapan ang kakulangan sa pagkain. So, the Asian Development Bank has contributed to help the IP's people. So, kana siya na bangko mo or yun na siya ang yan ang nagpa kumbaga sa Bisaya nagtabang sa ilaha para makontribute ang ilang mga planning sa mga agriculture, mga pananim nila para naa sila'y mahiaon sa pagkain nila sa mga indigenous people. And the second, International Labor Organization also create sustainability towards indigenous people to have the rights on their own land, access to their ownership. So, ito ay mabisang paraan upang maisa katuparan ang mga bagay na dapat ay kanilang pagmamayari. Third, Philippine Action for Intellectual Development also help the indigenous people to maintain the ownerships within the particular possession. In other words, it will allow them to have their voice on the claiming their own. National Confederation of the Indigenous People is the unified project. In accordance to the various indigenous people with regards to their capability and acquire and obtain their rightful thing. So, kagaya lamang ang mga ancestral domain, Sustainable Development Protection Plan or EDSDPP na napapahayag ng kakayahan upang ilaban ang kaniyang or lupang pagmamayari nila. So, ibig sabihin, no, ang mga indigenous people, na sila yung mga right nila sa development protection plan. So, the Tribal of the Communities Association of the Philippines is a legal basis which assess the indigenous people or IPs to claim their rights. So, pinoprotektahan nila mula sa mga hindi nakakatulong sa batas na patibayin ang kanilang kakayahan upang makamit ang kanilang pagmamayari. So, and the last, gaps in the law. Gaps in the law as the case one was prominent in the history, ito rin ay nagdala ng paghihirap ng mga IPs para makuha ang lupa at kagamitan na bibilang sa kanila. In this mistake really made the local government hinder the indigenous people claim the possession.